got 1100 on the clock. If you got a seat, please take it. Thanks for being here today. A couple of admin notes up front. As you come in on the left and the right, I know we got some people standing in front of. We got some products for you. What we're going to talk about today. There are 3 articles that will come out in the next Armor Journal.
Armor magazines are out for this trip.
Outstanding. So on either side, as you enter and or exit this room, there are 3 everything we're going to talk about today. The trend line analysis that brought us to where we're at right now, as well as the overall of the concept of the strategy that we're supporting the armor progression we're doing. The men's restroom is right out of this door to the left. The women's restroom, I apologize, you have to go out to the right and then left down the hall. Okay? Without further ado, since we don't have a lot of time to go through, please hold all questions to the end, but have them ready to go. Sir, what was yours?
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. Hey, everyone. It's good to see that the room is packed, and it's also good to see such a young crowd in here because it's really you that are going to be implementing this and living this, as we move forward. So what you see behind you is what we're calling Armor 23, right? It's also, the longer name is Armor Training and Standardization Strategy 2030. So we've all seen Army 2030, right? Everyone knows we got Army 2030 coming, right? There's the aim point and the waypoint. And so us as a branch, we also need to change, right? Because the operating environment is changing, right? If you were watching anything going on Russia and Ukraine, things are constantly changing. We have to take that into account. We're getting new doctrine. All right, MDO is going to be published next month. All right, so we're getting a brand new doctrine. First time we've had like a big change in doctrine in a long time. Some will say it's the biggest kind of evolution of doctrine since we've done air-land battle in the 1980s. So again, a big change in our doctrine. We have new equipment coming. Modernization is coming. The Chief of Staff of the Army, the Secretary of the Army, 6 modernization priorities. We've got our cross-functional teams that are delivering these modernization platforms. And you look at from us, from the Army community, we've got the next generation combat vehicle, or OMFV, right? We have got coming. That's going to be the replacement to the Bradley. And as an armor branch, in the next 6 months, we'll have full proponency of the Bradley, and we'll be crewing the Bradley, with the creation of the 19 Charlies we begin to build back and all that stuff. We also have the the MPF, right? Mobile Protected Fire System. The decision was made to purchase, and we're getting ready to field. There's going to be 4 active duty battalions of MPF that are fielded, and then we're going to have a battalion. We're going to have a battalion in the 2 battalions in the reserve, in the National Guard as well, right? And then we also have probably something next. There's a lot of discussion going on right now about what comes after the current V3 tank. Okay, so again, lots of changing things, right? And then to kind of put a bow on this is, so we've got changing doctrine, always changing everything else like this. The problem is that, the issue really is too that we aren't as good at our base skills as we need to be. We have a platform lethality problem. We have a problem. It's been going on now for a number of years. You could go back and say a lot of it has to do with the fact that we work on our tanks at Bradleys as we were going through Afghanistan and Iraq deployments. Op tempo is increasing, and so we're just not that good. If you look at those articles, you'll see in those articles some AAR comments that came out of the most recent Sullivan Cup, and this year's Sullivan Cup was both our tank and Bradley. We have crews that don't know how to conduct corrective fire checks. They can't do plumb and sink. They have problems utilizing the idea, right, which is part of our gunnery. There's a lot. We just have a lot of problems. What we also know is that our doctrine and processes are actually really, really good. You look at the last 2 Sullivan Cups, our top performing crews on Sullivan Cup, what did they just complete? Net training. And what do you do when you come out of net training? You follow exactly, what our doctrine tells us, we need to do in order to follow an integrated weapon training strategy. And so we're going to talk now, just how does this all come together? The focus of this is that standardization. And we're going to accomplish that through mirroring what aviation does, how they build and maintain readiness, called readiness level progression. And so if you look on each side, this kind of is training. We're we're going to really get after a much different, detailed technical aspect of training, from privates all the way up through our, through our captains and lieutenant colonels, and then you have a leader development model, and in the middle is a standardization, and that's your RL progression. And so I'm going to talk more about Armor 2030 at the Armor Lunch, but I just want to kind of set the context for how RL progression fits into the overall Armor 2030 strategy. And it's just time for that bold step. We have to do something because we're not delivering the lethality that our nation depends on. Ryan, over to you.
Sir, thank you. So to understand where we're headed, we got to figure out how we got here. So picture an army emerging from the trauma of being employed in war for multiple decades. An army where low readiness and retention threatens force structure and lower budgets. An army seeking to define itself as the United States rebalances and assesses strategic policy. An army watching from afar a conflict in a distant land, recognizing the lessons learned will invariably impact its conduct into the future. This was the Army in 1973. General William Depew, the first straight out commander, led an army through a transformative period in the 1970s. General Don Starry led the effort from the Armor Center as he orchestrated the study of the Yom Kippur War and was significant in the drafting of FM 100-5 operations, along with General Depew. The Army sought to articulate priorities and standards through the writing of RTEPs, the development of force design initiatives, force modernization efforts that led to the Bradley and the Abrams tank, and eventually the combat training centers. One can surmise we find ourselves in similar circumstances today. In fact, both Secretary Warmuth and General McConville used the words inflection point yesterday here at the Maneuver Center of Excellence. This is exactly what General Starry called the mid-1970s. The 3 Corps Lethality Report of 2019 focused on Armored Brigade combat teams. It found, among other outcomes, a 30% decrease in hit percentage at the National Training Center during live fire. First run qualification rates among the force below 60% for both tank and Bradley. The report broke outcomes into 3 categories. 1, restore master gunner utility and proficiency. 2, ensure leader proficiency. And 3, improve unit readiness and training. These findings, along with the observations from combat training centers and Sullivan Cup performance, leads us to reimagine the future of armor leader training across all disciplines. From the report came 38 task outcomes affecting the way we plan, prepare, and execute training and education, both within the institutional Army and the operational armor force. None of these outcomes or tasks can be addressed in isolation, but must be complementary in a unified effort involving all of us. In early 2022, General Felty directed 316th Cav Brigade to lead an effort in developing the 2030 armor training and standardization strategy that Lieutenant Colonel Cannon will describe in a minute. This is about us getting better, more ready, and more lethal as we redouble our effort to certify leaders through a common recording mechanism to transfer readiness. Instill a mindset across shoot, move, communicate, and maintain as a concept of persistent, not episodic training. We are evaluating and revising programs of instruction to ensure our efforts in the institutional force complement and enhance efforts in the operational force. Lastly, 3 Corps is going to pilot this in the coming months to assess efficiency, identify gaps, and help our ability to rebalance efforts leading to readiness and lethality. And now Lieutenant Colonel Cannon will introduce the strategy and the concept of readiness level.
Hey, give me a slide transition real quick before we get started. Hey, so as introduced, Lieutenant Colonel Cannon, commander for 316 Cav here in Fort Benning, Georgia in the MCoE. You've heard a little bit about the why. You've heard a little bit about the what. Now let's talk about the how. How are we going to get after the problem sets that we've seen? We are operationalizing this strategy in 3rd Squadron, specifically because we have a lot of the subject matter experts needed to get after this problem set. I mentioned a few. We've got all the master gunners, Common Core, and platform. We also teach maneuver leader maintenance course, which some of you company grade officers will be coming through before you leave FEGA to get after some of the maintenance issues that we have across this strategy. So we are operationalizing this strategy. Okay, give me a next slide, please. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to break this down and talk to you about what this strategy actually looks like. Okay, thank you, right there. So if you look on the left slide here, you're looking at the aviation model. The aviation model has executed this model for several decades. We've been in coordination with them both at the operational and the generating force levels to make sure that we're looking at the same model and we can apply it the same way. If you look from top to bottom, you see the readiness level progression, moving from RL3 to 2 and then to 1 being the most ready, the most qualified, certified. And on the bottom, what you have is the flight activity categories. Those are essentially focused on billet and assignment. So aviators, depending on what their billet is, right? So fact 1 for them would be an MCoE unit. Hey, they're flying. They're part of a crew. So they need to be the most ready and the most certified. We are going to use that model to a certain extent. There are going to be some changes. And the first changes you're going to see here on the right-hand side is how we're going to define for the armor branch our platform activity categories. Instead of flight, obviously, flying, platform-focused platform activity category, which is going to change to platform assignment category because that's where our constraints are located at. So Pack 1, these are vehicle crewmen, 19 series vehicle crewmen that are assigned to a crew inside of an ABCT formation as we move towards the pilot rescue right now. Pack 2 will be those assigned to a billet with inside a VCT. However, they may not be assigned to an individual crew, but they're close enough to the resources required to get to this certification across the RL progression that I'll describe to you here in a minute. They have access to those resources so they can continue to do so. And then Pack 3 would be those assigned external to a VCT. Right, broadening the assignments. We'll give you an example of what that looks like here in a moment. Slide. Okay, so on the left, here is the model. And we'll break down by component. We already talked about the packs on the bottom of the slide. You see that pack 3 to 2 to 1 based off of assignment. Up top, where it says PME start, you look left to right, you see readiness level 3 to 2 to 1. The only addition than what we've already described right now are those categories mentioned by Colonel Krantz: shoot, move, communicate, maintain the fundamentals of mounted maneuver. So let's describe real quick, and I'm going to give you some examples on what we're doing to break down each one of these categories. So simply put, if you look at the shoot line of effort, you'll notice a couple of things. It's essentially the execution of the integrated weapon training strategy. That's it. Okay? We're not creating new doctrine. We're moving this from the shadows out into the light, and we're going to hold individual crew members accountable for executing across the IWTS. A couple of things that we've seen with regards to the trend analysis, the 3-4 lethality study, and the Sullivan Cup that we noticed, there are some associated tasks that crews just are not doing well or don't understand how to do at all. For instance, armor accuracy checks, prep to fire, deployment sync. I'll also, as you go across the readiness levels, you see we get to RL2 and RL1, you see that we throw an advanced gunnery 1 and advanced gunnery 2 in there. Why is that? Right? We'll talk a little bit about the Combined Arms Center competence continuum and why that's important. But we believe that sim training, even past the gates to live fire in preparation to get out to do live fire through GT 4 through 6 is important to continue those reps and sets and those engagement skills, again, that we've seen through trend analysis we're having issues with. With regards to move, we're going to provide the same requirements. You see the call for fire up there, but more importantly, we're going to cross over move and communicate by getting after those tactical tasks. We're going to break those down. Off to the right here is a really great example, just a snippet of some of our crosswalks. We're identifying those individual critical tasks that are levied across the TNEOs to get after the battle drills. And this is where you're going to see the move and communicate come out in real time. RL2, we're going to be focusing on that movement to contact, right? Focusing on those engagement skills, focusing on employment of your platform and be executed either in the simulator or out in the training area, depending on the resource available at your unit's location. And then RL1, we're going to move more towards that deliberate defense, and we're going to be focused on the crew level, up to crew level. So We're going to be looking at those battle drills. Occupy a BP, defend a BP. And then for maintain, we're going to get after the basics, right? The MCS. We're going to take a look at some of those higher level tasks, right, from a knowledge perspective. How do we supervise maintenance, hull and turret services? Understanding what an ESR actually is, all enabling your ability as a crew member to maintain your platform. We're also going to take a look at something called 15-level maintenance task. Anybody know what a 15-level maintenance task is? It's a trick question. They don't exist, right? We're looking at those 20-level maintenance tasks between our logisticians and our master gunners and the armor branch to identify what are those tasks that crew members should be able to do at their level, right? And we're going to focus that on three specific categories, right? Our ability to troubleshoot, right? Verify faults, and actually hang parts. So our team is currently looking at what are those 20-level tasks that can be pulled down to the crew member to actually do. The great part about that is it's already laid out in our Master Gunner courses. We teach a lot of those same tasks. So the tasks have already been identified. We just need to bring it down into this program.
And just one thing to kind of put over the top on this too, people might ask me what's so different on this. The other difference that I didn't highlight when we went over the Armor 2030 slide is really the role of the Master Gunner is fundamentally going to change. The Master Gunner is going to be your standardization officer. The Master Gunner is going to be your instructor pilot. Your Master Gunner is the one that's going to certify the crew members on these tasks. It's not going to be a lot like you're not going to certify each other. The Master Gunner, it'll come down on a window, it'll be scheduled on your training schedule, and it'll be like Felty, Tuesday, motor pull. You're getting evaluated on your RL3 task for conducting movement of contact. And you'll go down to the motor pool, and you'll be given a hands-on practical exam, and it's certified by the Master Gunner that you are proficient at that task. Upon completion of your certification, then it's going to go to a digital job book that's hung online, right? So that it is like, so you have an actual record that goes with you everywhere in the Army that can get transferred from one unit to the other on your actual certifications. The whole idea of this too is that we don't start from zero anywhere. This is a continuum. We're constantly improving and we're constantly learning, and that'll allow us to, to kind of maintain, generate, and sustain readiness over time. So we got to think back, Master Gunners, right? Significant change in how we use, the Master Gunner. The other change that we're examining, we're getting some traction on, is the creation of a warrant officer for Master Gunner. So at the company level, company troop level, you'll still have an NCO, that's your Master Gunner, but then we'll allow a track to become a warrant officer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at the battalion, brigade, division, corps, force comm level. And so it's time to bring that level of technical expertise and experience to our branch as our platform, as we modernize and our equipment just gets more and more complicated.
Thank you, sir. So a couple other things to mention, right? As we've gone into mission analysis on this, and I've already spoken about some of the programs of instructions that are in our Master Gunner courses and trying to identify those 15-level tasks. A couple of other things that we're also identifying. So we just got complete with what we call the Master Gunner audit. We sent 5 MCCE graduates through both Master Gunner Common Core and both our Bradley and Abrams platform courses. And the reason that we did that is we want to see what are we currently teaching across those courses that teach expertise to the level that we're looking to get to, and what can we pull out? What should we be teaching in PME? And in this case, officer PME. We're doing a very similar analysis for MCoE as well, right? A couple of things that came out of that audit. Unit training plans, right? Recommendation to add that to MCCC course material. Application of surface danger zone, by-weapon system, bringing that back into both. As you mentioned, sir, up front with IDEA, right? Detect, identify, decide, engage, and assess. Why are we not teaching that in the bullets? And can we pull that back in? And then troubleshooting gun cards, something that I've already kind of mentioned with regards to that. So just some information. Again, we're collecting all this data, doing the analysis, and figuring out where it best fits in with regards to the operationalization of the strategy. Next slide. Okay, let me go ahead and address the advanced gun 1 and 2. We're trying to get out in front of questions. As we talk with both the generating and the operational force and we get feedback, this is one of the things that we get some pushback on. So I kind of explained it up front. Why does this matter? Well, on the left-hand side, you'll see the competence continuum as defined by the Combined Arms Center. And it very clearly defines the level, very much like Bloom's taxonomy, that we're actually looking to generate, not only in the operational force through training, but also here in the generating force through our courses and our POIs. What we're trying to get after here is we acknowledge, again, that trend line analysis shows this, that we're bordering on proficiency in our crew. We need to get beyond proficiencies in our crews and get to expertise. So how are we going to bridge that gap? The key here is when we're looking for experts, right, the comprehensive knowledge and of skill to accomplish all the tasks associated, in this case, by specific platform, to an excellence level. So what would excellence level be? Well, we got a Q1. What are the percentages of our units that are shooting distinguished, right? That's what that excellence level we're trying to get at. And then under adverse conditions, and here's where Advanced Gun 1 and Advanced Gun 2 come in with the AGTS and our SINs, right? Once we get through the gates to live fire, that certifies us to go then and fire live our platform. But Advanced Gun 1 and 2 increases those adverse conditions, right? So some of the, and Steve, feel free to jump in here if I'm completely off base on some of these, right? We're looking to increase ranges, right? You get multiple targets, so additional simultaneous engagements, right? We're now engaging out to the max expected range of our platform weapon systems, etc. And it provides us with those sets and reps. So to give you an idea why we want to continue to push forward, and again, this comes straight out of the IWTS. We're not creating anything new here, not trying to reinvent it. Next slide. Okay, so let me give you an idea about transferring readiness. So back to the RL progression. Again, this is constantly going out of the plans for this they're constantly being executed in the background, much like the aviation community does. Our master gunners at the company level are facilitating the training and assessments across RL progression, and it should always be happening in the background. If you look at the left-hand slide, here's an example. We're going to utilize an example for transferring readiness. This program is focused on the individual crew member, meaning that certification that is earned individually and will travel with that individual. So if you look at the top right here, we've got an RL1 qualified crew. We have their gunner, Sergeant Cox, out of Forest Bliss, gets orders to leave Fort Bliss and head to Fort Hood, Texas. Well, he's an RL1 certified gunner. So when he arrives to Fort Hood, he can very easily be put into any crew, turbulent or otherwise, and in this case, RL1 qualified, and it's a one-to-one match, meaning that now that gunner theoretically does not need to go back and go execute a GT6 with that crew to certify that crew. Does that make sense? All right, we'll move on. So Sergeant Rich, whose place Sergeant Cox is taken at that PCS, he comes down on orders, DA select for drill sergeant school. So he's gonna head to wherever he's gonna head to, and he's gonna be out probably for 36 months at least on the trail of the drill sergeant. He's gonna move into a PAC-3 category because that's a broadening assignment, right? So he was RL1 certified coming out of the assignment. Now he's gonna move into a PAC-3. He's not gonna be able to maintain that 12-month condemnation criteria. But here's what we're gonna do to get Staff Sergeant Rich ready to go when he comes off the trail to go back to the operational force. And we've already talked about this. We're looking at our current POIs, our current courses, and what we need to add to make this strategy actually come to life. And in this case, Staff Sergeant Rich, before he PCSs Fort Benning, Georgia, and comes off the trail as a drill sergeant, he's going to attend the Tank Commander's course here at Fort Benning, Georgia. And that's going to certify him back up to an RL2 or an RL1 level, depending on how we redesign that course. So that when he leaves PCSs to Fort Riley, he's already left from a PAC-3 assignment as a drill sergeant. He's gotten the training that he needs in preparation for his upcoming PAC-1 assignment. So we're going to move it from an RL3 to an RL2 and an RL1 before he PCS. And then when he arrives, Fort Riley, he has the ability to take on one of the tank commander positions and falls right into an RL2. Okay?
Yeah, he's not check right.
The check right, absolutely. And it's coming up here in a little bit, sir. We'll talk about what the commander's roles are and part of that check right. The next slide. All right, so off to the left, you see the roles and responsibilities with regards to who is executing this RL progression model, right? So we've already talked a little bit about the role of the master gunner. At the company level, they're going to be executing these assessments. So going back to the model that we just utilized with Staff Sergeant Rich when he arrives to his new unit, and he comes with him RL2 certified. All that really is going to require him to do is a check ride, and those company grade master gunners are going to be executing those check rides. And then just like they do in the aviation community, they're going to be reporting back to the commander. We'll talk about the commander's roles here in a minute to certify that training and then stabilize that crew. For the battalion and above level, as mentioned before, they're going to be focused on the resource management and the tracking of RL progression, as well as the quality assurance. They're going to have quality assurance of that program as well. We're also going to be able to provide that same from the generating force here at USARMs and MCoE. So the role of the soldier, what's the role of the soldier? Well, maintain proficiency. As an individual progresses across the RLs, right? The individual crew members have to maintain their proficiency. There's some self-study that's going to be required. And that self-study is going to support those annual written exams that are going to be a requirement no matter what pack you're in. You're going to be required to at least take a written annual exam. But most importantly, the role of the soldier is just like a soldier is going to certify their board file for a centralized selection board. You're verifying your ERB or your ORB. You're verifying that board file before you click, yep, verified, good to go, ready for the board. We need to have the same type of focus from the soldier level on that RL progression as well. So we're going to build digital job books. Right now, we think DTMS is going to be able to support this effort. And you've got to make sure that, hey, I'm certified RL2, I'm within the condemnation criteria, right? There's some responsibility there. So think of the old Love Me books. Hey, I need to know where I'm at along RL, right? And I need to start thinking 2 levels up as well, right? I'm a young E5. I'm a gunner, I'm qualified, I'm RL1. Hey, what's my next step? I'm going to need to be a tank commander. I need to start looking at some of those tasks at that level to make sure that we're good to go. And then I can maintain that same RL at the next grade point. And then the role of commander, right? I bifurcate the role of the commander down to 2 things the commander does with regards to RL progression. Number 1, commander still certified training. They'll be facilitated by the master gunners who will execute the training and execute those check rides, and then bring it to the commander to mitigate that risk. And that's the second thing that the commander is going to do. They're going to manage that risk. We'll talk a little bit about how we think RL progression will assist commanders in managing that risk, especially when it comes down to turbulent crews, as we've kind of already discussed, right? So those are the 2 roles of the commanders that we think are, for the commander, that we think are important to RL progression. Next slide. Okay. So let's talk about some of that risk management. We kind of already utilized in the example what exactly this means, but we've got an example up here. And I will say this, .D is doing great work with getting out in front and creating, number 1, platform-specific training circulars, right, Steve? They're going to come out and support the IWTS, and within those there'll be a Chapter 7 that lays out by platform what the RL progression actually is, those tasks associated and along this timeline. So if you see the example up on the left, we've broken that down, RL3, 2, and 1, broken down by T week, because we look at that from a commander's perspective, the risk assumed in the pace of application of the RL progression is how close to your collective training event, in this case, GT 4 through 6, do you stabilize or unstabilize those crews. So here's your turbulent crew example, very, very simple. Go back to the transferring readiness slide that I talked to you about earlier. I've got a staff sergeant outbound. I've got a staff sergeant inbound. It should be a 1-for-1 swap because that inbound staff sergeant comes with an RL level, an RL certification that is captured digitally in the digital jobs book that we're going to create. And then the commander, the master gunner will execute the check ride, and then the commander will make the determination on assigning that staff sergeant to the platform and certifying that crew. Either they can stay in line with the collective training cycle, the collective training calendar they already have, moving towards GTC. Okay. On the right-hand side, this is just kind of a once over the world, and not to get down in the weeds, but this is what RL progression looks across rearm, right? Rearm broken down by 8-month chunks, and this is where we think we'll be executing rearm. We believe that we can execute rearm all the way up to and through the mission part, the mission category of rearm. Slide. Okay, and that should bring us to the end. So we've got a good 30 minutes to ask any questions. I've got a lot of my team already up front here in the room who have been working on this for quite a while. Of course, we've got Steve here from .D, who's been a huge help in developing this from the ground up as well. What are your questions?
Sir, Captain English, current MCoE. So going before Riley had really shortage of master gunners. My company, besides my first sergeant, I had none. My first sergeant PCS had 0 qualified master gunners. So with the increase of requirements for our master gunners, is there going to be a plan to increase course numbers for life health schools, or is there going to be an increase in things? Educate, maybe motivate staff sergeants almost done with their intent to take over the whole certified.
Can anybody in this room tell me how many full Bradley Master Gunner courses we've had in the last 7 years? Besides first sergeant. 2, and one of them graduated last week. This is not a capacity issue. This is a willingness to send. Send people who are ready and qualified, who pass your Sable Academy, as per the integrated weapon training strategy. We will get them into the course. And if you have a problem in ATARs, contact Lieutenant Colonel Cannon or myself.
We also think that the Master Gunner to Warrant program that we're going to work as part of our FAR objectives for the strategy is going to play out. And it's going to open up some of those capabilities for those Master Gunners, right? So how to get after some of the problem sets that I've seen, at least in my career. I'm sure some of you have, right? Some Master Gunners like to do Master Gunner things, right? But there's still that requirement for them to continue to go from KD assignment to KD assignment to remain competitive. So we think that's going to help mitigate as well. Great question. That's what we're looking at. Back in the back.
Sir, Robert, so I know the Army's moving towards CMF proficiency, particularly with promotions, right? You have to have these schools this amount of time to rating, and we're looking at 2030. Is your RL rating going to have any bearing on promotion? Like, is that going to be looked at all? Because that would affect people that are on routing assignments that are RL degree. Is that going to be integrated into looking at promotion?
Sorry, so it does matter, but I think it's actually a part of accountability. So, I mean, for all the techers out there, how many, right, you don't have to raise your hand, this is, I'm not looking for a confessional, but how many platoon sergeants, Q2? There's probably a number of them at Q2, I guarantee it from looking at the stats. How many platoon leaders and company commanders then wrote, best platoon sergeant in the company, best NCO I've ever served with, this person's a rock star, promote to master sergeant immediately. I've recently sat aboard, I can tell you, and a lot of people say that. So what we want is accountability on those non-commissioned officers and those, in terms of your RL level proficiency, your platform proficiency, your proficiency as a tanker or, a cap scout or our Bradley crewman. We want that proficiency to really matter in terms of that, on that evaluation. So your RL level, you don't need to be RL1 at any given time to get, report card because it's cyclical. On the rearm cycle, we only had it during the modernization and training. But RL progression is persistent. It happens all the time. This idea links integrated weapon training strategy to iteration, right? So it links the integrated weapon training strategy together, right? Between the operational force, generating force, and institutional force. But that's where the accountability is going to come from. The accountability is going to come from, are you good at taking your job? If you fail your annual exam, I can't imagine someone getting a good evaluation. When some of the senior folks in this room, as a young officer, if you Q2'd your tank, I mean, you're probably done. Your officer evaluation report would read something like, an outstanding officer capable of, future job somewhere down the road, something very bland like that. So that's what we're kind of driving for. We're driving for that level of expertise to be held accountable, and then you can use it in our evaluations as we go forward. And then we'll have it all in a record. We can see it all. We can see exactly, the history of that soldier, the number of hours they drove, their CTC rotations, if they've ever been into an accident, their qualification scores as a gunner, as a tank commander, and over time. And so I think overall, that's just, again, it's a method of accountability. Then we can tie to our evaluation points. Good?
Great question. What else do we have?
Sir. Sir, Command Sergeant Major Hardy, 3rd Battalion, 66 Armor, out of 1st Brigade, 1st Infantry. Sir, I really like this model. It makes a lot of sense to me. But one of the things that I'm wondering about is we're focused on the tank commanders and the gunners. I don't know that if there's a focus or a future focus on the drivers and the loaders. Specifically, I'm thinking of drivers. Who are, arguably the most junior soldiers in that crew, who don't get a lot of proficiency in driving the tank. CCTT is a great tool. It's awesome, but it doesn't give you the same effect as driving over, rough terrain, or, you're driving in Fort Riley in the training area, and we just got back from Lithuania. You go to Lithuania, and that's just nothing but sand and soft soil. And what we were finding is our drivers are throwing track constantly because they've never driven on anything soft. Same thing with driving over obstacles. You get to the small, 2-foot wall, and soldiers are not able to get them over those walls, or they throw track while they're trying to do it. Is there a plan in place in the future to start incorporating maybe some advanced driving training or increasing the driver training POI? And then, sir, I did have a second question. I saw the tank commander's course, another phenomenal idea. But who would be responsible for scheduling that? Is it come back to the unit responsible for paying for and scheduling, or would it be on that, say he's at recruiter or drill, would it be responsible at that station? Thank you, sir.
I'm going to jump in. Yeah. It's not quite his level. He's crushing it as a squadron commander. A couple things. Tank commander certification course. If this ends up happening, this idea of transferring readiness from drill sergeant, recruiter, someone we need to catch up, right, to kind of transfer, to build, to regreen that soldier, to send back to the force, that'll be like kind of an HRC kind of thing. It'll be one of those automatic, hey, you finished your job recruiting in New Jersey, and then you're going to clear your unit, and then you're going to do TDY en route, go get the course you need, and then come back. And so it'll be a cost that the institution, the unit won't necessarily be responsible for sending them to that. That's the idea, right? As we're going forward. So that's how that'll work. And then in terms of the curriculum, we've got to look in terms of resources, what we can afford. Are we going to be able to afford everyone to go through a full of gunnery? I don't know. We'll see. That's the goal right now, but it might end up being RL2, which will we could probably go RL1 minus gunnery, which is still pretty good. It's a lot easier to integrate that NCO into our formations as we go forward. Now, to your question on, now taking your first question. So right now there isn't a plan for us to manage your driver training or your loader training. We're just, it's like, in a lot of ways, I kind of feel, like we're coming down into your house anyway, but we're not going into your drivers and your loaders. That's really going to be on you. That's going to be on your staff sergeants, your NCOs. But one of the things we are doing, and we have JC Rosenstrau from 194 in the room. All right, part of Arbor 2030 and one of our near-term priorities is we're going to license all the drivers coming out of OSIN. So your tank drivers and your Bradley drivers will be licensed coming out of OSIN. All you have to do now in your unit is do your command, like all the things commanders have to do, but it'll kind of close that gap on some of the basic level training that has to happen. Department of the Army, whoever inspects, driver's training program is actually, down here and completed their inspection of our program. So we're going to be able to implement that pretty soon. So that's, again, I don't think we're going down to driver training. I'd love for you to take on more advanced driver training, but probably from the schoolhouse, I don't think we're there just yet.
Well, we're adding in 351 driver training, increased driver training capabilities, and in the trim model, there are drivers, it's not just straight to two lanes. We fund at the Army level in your op-tempo mileage for tank and Bradley crews, drivers training and other forms of maneuver before we get into just our platoon company BCT mode. So it's our major that I think the mileage is there, and we do just need to look at that. Just like the Hotel 8 kind of, maintenance and recovery, we got to get those driving training skills up so we can fight and win at night as well.
So, thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Ramiro.
Hey, Chuck, so along that lines, man, when you're working the TT thing, the dollars associated with sending folks TDY and RAP, you and I both know the unit pays for it.
Yes, sir.
So, we're talking about additional add-ons for people to go to school, and that means you're gonna have to fight for the dollars in the TT pay to make sure it's parked, because all of that money is gonna come back into ground op tempo. That's how we pay for the TDY dollars, for the most part. That's not where we like to pay for it, but with the shrinking dollars that we have on the TDY side of the house, it's going to become a significant emotional event. And
yes, sir.
We're going to have to try to figure out what the cost over time is going to be so we can park the dollars the right way, because the units aren't going to have enough TDY dollars to be able to absorb it.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we're relooking like MCoE and just actually put those back into commanders' hands and letting them prioritize. So there's not these like binary, people can go to master gunner school, and so we want to look at that. So we take the taxes out of it, put it back to the commanders, and let them just have that fund. So we'll look at that. So with MCoE and TDY, acknowledge.
Plenty of time for other questions. Great questions so far. The back.
That's our major chief instructor for RTI and OCI call. When you talk about this broadening assignment and them folks going through base commanders or Bradley commanders course, is there any plan to incorporate a guard units like my RTI that teach tank commanders or Bradley commanders in this training program?
There is long-term, yes. We're focused on implementation, especially as we move forward into the pilot on Compo 1, but there are plans down the road for Compo 2 and 3 as well.
Yeah, no, it's just total Army, right? It's total Army as we go forward. So I've already talked to, our DCG here, our Army National Guard. I've been talking to a lot of the other division commanders too. It's just your RL, just like anything, the difference between the active component and reserve component, the timelines and everything, it's the same stuff. It'll just be expanded out over a greater number of time. And then we'll also look at, whether or not they can go tank commander certification towards Bradley commander certification, whether RPI can do it, or, there's also a solution if the person's just going back to the unit. In the force column readiness model, they tend to, consume readiness and get rid of readiness very, very quickly. And the reserve component, the model's a little slower, and so it might be okay for you just to join the unit as RL3 and then catch up to do RL1. It just depends how time sensitive, that we need that RL1 crew. I mean, it's the same thing on our side. Maybe not everyone goes through. Maybe not everyone goes through the full training, but if you have a brigade that's in a window getting ready to go do something, that's where it's super important to make sure that those guys come in at a higher RL1.
Back, we'll come back.
Sir, first class Braden, I'm an instructor here at MCoE. I had a question on the warrant officer for master gunners.
Okay.
Specifically, are we the plan to try and fit master gunners more into the current warrant officer role of the armament systems maintenance warrant, or try and transition it more to what the United States Marine Corps focuses on? They have the master gunners as enlisted personnel, and then they have the infantry weapons officer course that serves as the gunner that does both maintenance and employment of weapon system and unit training.
I'll speak to it from our level and pass it.
We'll just go Steve. Steve, go ahead.
So, I'm Steve Ritchie with Branch of Weapons Gunnery. How are you from here? So, the warrant officer program, there's a return on investment that's required first. In order to build any warrant officer program, you have to have expertise, and that expertise would be the non-commissioned officer or master gunner. The return on investment that the community puts into a master gunner is capped out at the 2 sergeant branch qualified master gunner. At that point, there has to be a decision-making process for that sergeant to decide to go to the warrant officer program. But that doesn't automatically entitle him or to go into that program, because from the pool of all, there's only so many battalion master gunners, brigade master gunners, et cetera, up through the echelons that are going to be placed. So the best of the best get selected in that program. If the warrant officer program didn't work out, or we couldn't get there from here, the same principle could be with a separate MOS for leadership versus technical. So a 19 X-ray versus a 19 Zulu, you could rank into a separate MOS. That's a possibility, but that is the least preferred method. Does that answer your question?
That's it, appreciate it.
All right, about another 10 minutes before we need to reset the room for the armor lunch. So, Jim, was it you who raised your hand earlier?
Yeah, I think you answered, Dan, but you touched on for officer training, and I think I have the answer for this, but so when they come out of their basic course and where they are along the RL progression, and then how you see them integrating into company and troop level, and then where they can take their RL progression from there, just on that entry level.
The end goal is that they show up at a certain RL level, just like we would. So if you're going to go be a Bradley commander or platoon leader, obviously, or you need tank, you should be going to the tank commander's course, the Bradley commander's course before you leave. So change that POI. You should be coming out of there with the same RL level as the crew members that you're arriving to, which your first or return duty station come out in.
Yeah, going in position is like when you look at so part of the armor 2030 is like we have to do a comprehensive analysis of all of our POI, right? We got to pilot first. We got to figure out what we need, and then we're going to go back and rebuild all of our programs of instruction to support what we need. So for the officer basic course, think they first come in, it's a common core. They come in, they do all their common core things that all lieutenants have to do, and then they go to tank school. And then we're going to teach them everything they need to know about a tank, right? And it's got to be much more comprehensive than we know. It's got to be shoot, move, communicate, sustain. And within that, that'll come up to an RL level. So ideally, every lieutenant that graduates tank school is an RL1. They qualify their tank and they're RL1. And then they move off to the third phase, which is you start getting into tactics, tripling procedures, employing the tank as a platoon, right? You get into more of the tactical phase, right? And then from there, they would bounce to go to the scout leader's course or any other following school they have to do. But that's kind of the model right now for for the base course. And if we know they're going to a Bradley unit, then they'd have to roll into the Bradley commander's course, just like we do now. And then through the Bradley commander's course, they'd be awarded a certain RL level as well to transfer and take with them to the unit. Helpful, Jim.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Sorry, so one more question. In reference to the SABO, the RL progression model, sir, if I take a crew and I go all the way through the shoot portion, and I'm the RL1 on the shoot portion, but I haven't done any of my move, communicate, or maintain, what level would I be? Or is that a discussion that the commander would then have with his master gunner and say, hey, we've taken these soldiers through RL1 through shoot, but based off of that, since we're not doing CCTT in 3 months, they still stay at 3. So whatever their lowest.
We got to do those other lines of effort.
Okay, so whatever their
It's
lowest.
tough to shoot when the thing's deadline.
Okay, so lowest RL progression would be what we would identify that crew for. Okay.
That's right.
Thank
Absolutely. Good question.
So I apologize if I missed it. The first chapter 3 was the improvements of the advanced gunneries. How many gunneries per year and an average how many expected?
So advanced done 1 and 2, in accordance with the IWTS, that attached to the simulator. So that's just hours in simulators, an application of research.
And Joe Felty, just for my own education here, I want to make sure that I understood what you said. So I got Common Core essentially in bowling. Are you talking about the technical piece being as part of what happens during bowling? We're not talking about adding additional time onto the backside of the life cycle of the lieutenant.
No, sir, that's right. It's a relook of what we'll call different phases of bowling. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 1, Common Core. Phase 2, tech school. Phase 3, tactics. You know, and the role of the platoon leader is kind of how that's the idea right now. Is we're getting ready to build relook at how officer education happens.
Okay.
All right, if there are other questions, the last thing that I'll say before we break today. The pilot's being planned. The pilot will be executed in FY23, and that's where we'll leave that information up for right now. Here on the MCoE, the annual exams, which I mentioned during the brief, the annual written exams have already been pushed out to the first 100 crew members across MCoE as part of our data analysis and collection that we're executing right now. That will also be integrated into the pilot. Okay, so please stay interested in the topic. It affects I think everybody in this room. We wouldn't be here to listen to it, and we'll continue to message through the journals and to the force on what we're learning from the pilot as we execute in the beginning of FY23. Okay.
Hey, Joe Felty, so one more thing in relation to the pilot that you're going to run through the MCoE side of the house here. You know, as we get a little bit more maturity associated with this, I will tell you, it will probably be worth the while to come back into the force comm side of the house to have a conversation, because this may be worth piloting with a brigade combat team out in the field. Because I think what will be important is to understand the time management aspect of this. And then, you know, in the sidebar comment I made to you is, I think we're going to exceed the capability of a single master gunner inside of a company. And I think we're going to need to diversify some of the things that we may be asking them to do to keep in platoon sergeant lanes, which is where a lot of these things lie anyway. So, yeah, we can have a conversation about it, but I think it's going to be important to get this into the field and you get some really good feedback.
Sir, it is General White. We probably miscommunicated it. General White is going to pilot this in calendar year 23, sir. So. Okay.
Force comm approves.
This session's been a victory. So, the next word, we have to do something else. Okay, any other last questions? Thanks, everybody.